The galactic station's medical ring pulsed with a constant thrum, part heartbeat, part machine. Beyond the curved windows hung the violet shimmer of Nebula K9, throwing bruised light over the corridors, where stretcher bots whispered by and med drones hovered like fireflies. Another convoy of wounded soldiers had just arrived from the outer colonies, the fallout of the Terran front skirmish. A fight that was supposed to be minor but never is when bodies come back through triage. Among the chaos moved Nurse Zyla Vren, one of the emerald-skinned seraphim from the moon of Aelon. Her people were known for precision and composure. Neither helped when she was handed a new chart labeled Human Male Critical Head Trauma. Humans were recent allies. Still, a biological mystery. Even the most seasoned medics stole glances at the newcomers who bled red instead of violet. Zyla approached the stasis bed. The patient was tall, chestnut-haired, dusted with battle soot. Under the medbay lights, his skin looked pale. Almost fragile, but the reading said alive. Vitals steady, she murmured. Neural pulse irregular. But holding. Good, grunted the lead physician. Clean him up and monitor until the neural techs arrive. Standard sponge protocol. Then he vanished into the storm of other emergencies, leaving her alone with the alien soldier. Zyla filled a basin with fragrant sterilant and warm water, the scent of citrus and ozone curling in the air. She'd memorized hundreds of alien anatomies, yet this one fascinated her. Smooth musculature under sparse hair. No dermal ridges. No. Bioluminescent nodes. How do you regulate temperature without them? She muttered, as she wiped away plasma residue. Her fingers lingered perhaps a fraction too long. Compassion and curiosity often blurred together in the ward. She was rinsing his legs when the monitor spiked. Something moved. Below the sheet. The human's anatomy responded in a way no seraphim text had prepared her for. The growth was rapid. The sensors erratic. By the 7 moons. She gasped, nearly dropping the sponge. Dr. He's swelling, possibly cardiac shock. The doctor arrived, glanced once, and burst into laughter, a deep, helpless laugh that echoed off the sterile walls. Relax. Nurse Zyla. He chuckled. That's no Zycher. Perfectly normal for the species. I believe you've just discovered a human reflex. The med team snickered. Someone muttered. Congratulations. Rookie. Zyla's cheeks flushed a vivid violet. Dignity reasserted itself by sheer willpower. Understood. Doctor. I'll record the phenomenon for medical study. Please don't, said the doctor, still wiping tears. When the laughter faded, she resumed her task, eyes carefully averted. Yet she couldn't unsee the mystery of it. That strange, involuntary signal of vitality. Humans, she decided, were alarmingly unpredictable. Hours later, when she returned to check vitals, the human stirred. His eyelids fluttered open, irises the color of old whiskey. Where am I? His voice was rough. Uncertain. You're aboard Galactic Station Erebos, she said. Steady, despite the rush in her chest. You were injured in battle. You're safe now. He blinked at her, dazed smile forming. Then I must have died and gone to heaven, 'cause I'm looking at an angel. Her pulse jumped. Seraphim rarely blushed. Yet her skin brightened several shades. She told herself it was just oxygen fluctuation. Before she could answer, the lead doctor entered. Ah. Sergeant Wild. Good to see you awake. You gave Nurse Zyla quite a scare, thought you were expiring, when your morning glory appeared. The ward erupted again. Even Wild managed a hoarse laugh. Guess I should thank my nurse for reviving every part of me. Zyla straightened. Every inch the professional. My concern was purely medical. Sergeant. I'll update your file accordingly. Please do, he said, eyes gleaming. I like a thorough nurse. That night, the station lights dimmed to emergency amber as the skirmish reports arrived. Another border flare-up. Another casualty wave inbound. Zyla sat in the staff lounge, head in her hands. Around her, younger orderlies dozed against the bulkhead. A mismatched found family, bound by exhaustion and caffeine. One of them, a reptilian medic named Kier, nudged her. First human. Huh, she sighed. First one to surprise me in every possible way. Kier grinned, baring tiny teeth. Careful. Nurse. Curiosity gets you transferred to the diplomatic corps. Outside the viewport, shuttles stitched silver lines through the nebula. Somewhere beyond them, political officers debated treaties and body counts, oblivious to the small dramas unfolding in the medbay below. But Zyla felt something shift inside her, a strange, gravitational pull toward that human soldier whose heartbeat had synced with the rhythm of her own. She told herself it was professional empathy. Deep down, she knew better. When she checked on him again, Wild was sleeping peacefully. Sensors, steady. She adjusted his pillow, brushed a stray lock from his forehead, and whispered too softly for monitors to record, "Rest easy. Soldier, you've caused enough commotion for one day." Beyond the glass, the nebula flared, casting green light over them both, as if the universe itself was smirking at what it had just set in motion. The medbay lights had shifted from harsh white to a soft aquamarine hue, signifying rehabilitation phase. Sergeant Wild had been stabilized, cleared for movement therapy, and assigned to the recovery wing. For reasons she couldn't quite articulate, certainly not in her report, Zyla volunteered to oversee his sessions. Officially, she told her supervisor, it was because she'd already learned his anatomy. Unofficially, curiosity and something unnameable kept her returning. Wild greeted her on the first morning with a grin that could melt titanium. "Morning. Nurse Angel. Ready to whip me into shape, rehabilitate you," she corrected, setting the scanner to monitor muscle tension. "Whipping is against protocol." He laughed, and the sound bounced pleasantly through the mirrored therapy chamber. Zyla tried to ignore how his shoulders flexed under the station's sterile gym light, or how the thin medical shorts clung to his movements. She focused on data, numbers, muscle density, anything but the man. "Raise your arm." "Slowly," she said, guiding him through a stretch. When he winced, she stepped close, steadying his elbow. Her hands cool against his skin drew a sharp inhale from him. "Still hurts. Not exactly the word I'd use." Zyla's ears tingled violet. She stepped back abruptly, clearing her throat. "We'll increase resistance tomorrow." But by the second week, resistance had become their favorite joke. Wild resisted instructions. Zyla resisted every impulse to smile. It was a losing battle for both. Outside the therapy hall, the galaxy refused to wait. The war along the Terran rim dragged on. Hollow feeds flickered with casualty lists. The hospital's command deck traded whispered reports about a coming truce negotiation. A rumor spread that Erevo Station might host the diplomatic summit if the staff could keep it free of scandal. Zyla overheard that briefing by accident while restocking Medgel. The words, "no distractions, no fraternization with allied species," echoed in her mind, long after she left the room. She knew what the administrators feared: any hint of impropriety between species could unravel the fragile alliance. And yet here she was, steadying a human's shoulder while his pulse beat faster beneath her palms. One session. Wild tried walking without the exo-brace. He made it 3 steps before his knees gave out. Zyla lunged forward, catching him too close. her face inches from his. For the heartbeat. Gravity seemed optional. His breath brushed her cheek. "Guess I fell for you," he murmured. The words short-circuited every neuron in her brain. She meant to scold him, to remind him of protocols, but instead she laughed. A soft, startled sound. It felt good. Dangerous. Human. When she finally helped him back to the bench, he asked quietly, "Tell me something. Zyla, do all seraphim smell like ozone and mint? Or is that just you?" Her composure cracked again. "That's the sterilizing compound. It's hardly romantic. Smells like home after a storm," he said. Fresh. Alive. Later that night, she found herself replaying that sentence while sitting in the staff canteen. The other medics, her little found family of sleepless healers, were swapping jokes about alien digestive systems. Kir, the reptilian orderly, noticed her distraction. "You're smiling to yourself." "Nuris, that's dangerous in wartime." Zyla sipped her tea. "Is it only if it's about a patient? They tend to heal faster than your heart does." She gave a non-answer and went back to her quarters. Outside her window, Erebos's orbital ring glimmered like a crown around the planet below. The sight always reminded her that service here was both honor and exile healers stationed, where politics were messy. Hearts forbidden. By week 3, Wild's coordination had improved. They moved to kinetic drills, elastic bands, balance poles. His teasing grew bolder, her counter-teasing sharper. One slip during a squat exercise sent them both tumbling to the mat. The contact was brief but electric, her palm against his heartbeat, his laughter rumbling through her ribs. They froze. The air between them turned thick as nebula dust. "Sergeant," she whispered, "this is not in your regimen. Feels therapeutic to me." Their eyes met, heat, confusion, longing, all folded into one impossible glance until the chamber door hissed open. Dr. Cairn poked his head in, raising an amused brow. Everything under control. Zyla sprang to her feet. Core strength exercises. "Doctor," Wild added, perfectly straight-faced. "She's making sure my balance improves." The doctor rolled his eyes and left muttering about interspecies hormones. The moment shattered, leaving Zyla's pulse racing. She helped Wild to his feet, avoiding eye contact. "We'll end here. You've made sufficient progress." "Progress," he echoed softly. "Yeah, feels like it." When she filed her end-of-day report, she added a note she never meant to send. "Patient exhibit rapid recovery. Possibly linked to elevated emotional stimuli. Recommend continued observation." She hovered over the submit icon, then deleted the note entirely. Some things the system didn't need to quantify. As the station rotated into its artificial night cycle, Zyla lingered by the medbay viewport. Below, the war-scarred planet shimmered with faint auroras, the byproduct of human bombardment and seraphim shielding tech intertwining in the atmosphere. Two incompatible systems, somehow coexisting. "Maybe that's us," she whispered to her reflection. "A miscalculation that works." Behind her, distant alarms wailed another shuttle of wounded inbound. She squared her shoulders and returned to duty, unaware that the real battle ahead would be fought not with blasters or scalpels, but with her own heart. Rehabilitation had settled into a rhythm, one that neither Zyla nor Sergeant Wild dared name aloud. The hum of med machines, the steady pulse of bioscanners, the measured exchange of orders and teasing remarks, all of it wove a thread between them stronger than either protocol or species law could forbid. Still, the war outside pressed on. Erebos Station hung between factions like a neutral heart, beating for all, belonging to none. Zyla often wondered how many quiet miracles happened here that the command council would rather not know about. The accident in the steam. It began innocently, as most disasters do. Wild's recovery had reached the hydrotherapy stage, a system of mineral baths meant to rebuild muscle elasticity. Zyla entered his recovery suite with a tray of nanogel tonics and the familiar flutter of nerves. The sound of running water drifted from the adjoining chamber. She frowned. The human wasn't scheduled for unsupervised use yet. "Sergeant Wild," she called. No response, just the rhythmic hiss of steam and a low, distinctly human hum. Concern overrode hesitation. Zyla stepped inside and froze. Through the shimmer of condensation stood Wild naked, unbothered, and very much alive. His reflection warped in the mist. The curves of muscle, accentuated by beads of moisture on his skin. He looked over his shoulder. Utterly unashamed. "Didn't mean to make you short-circuit." "Nurse. I was just testing the new water filters." Her brain blanked. You should not be unsupervised. These chambers are perfectly safe." He interrupted, grinning. "Unless you decide to join me, then we might need a medic on standby." Her cheeks flushed a luminous purple. "I came to ensure your vitals remained stable, not to observe this." He reached for a towel. Still smirking. "Then I'd say you observed quite thoroughly." Zyla fled. Heartbeat hammering like a war drum. Back in the corridor. She leaned against the cold metal wall, trying to breathe. She told herself it was outrage, but the trembling in her fingers betrayed her. The library of forbidden knowledge. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the curve of his smile, the heat of his gaze. It was maddening. Professional curiosity, she insisted. Purely academic. So she did what any Seraphim scholar would do. She researched. The hospital's lower decks housed an ancient data archive, dusty shelves of printed material from the early expansion era, long before the Alliance standardized knowledge networks. In the far corner, behind forgotten medical journals, Zyla found a slim, unmarked box. Inside, human literature. Paper pages, faded with age. She read one at random, tales of longing, of hands clasped in darkness, of desire, expressed through words instead of data streams. At first she blushed at the explicitness. Then fascination took over. Humans approached intimacy as both art and communication, an exchange of vulnerability. Not just biology. By the time she closed the book, she understood something fundamental, what she'd witnessed in the medbay, in the hydrochamber. In his laughter, it wasn't crude. It was connection. A lesson in healing. The next day, she entered his room with new composure. "Sergeant," she began, "today's therapy will focus on joint flexibility and emotional resilience." He raised a brow. "Emotional? Sounds dangerous. Only if you resist instruction." She adjusted the lighting soft. Amber. A faint melody thrummed from the station's communal music net, Brable.com. Something gentle from the Terran archives. The shift wasn't lost on Wild. "You redecorated." "I'm experimenting with environmental stimuli," she said coolly, though her hands trembled slightly as she positioned him on the med table. "Relaxation improves muscular recovery." As she guided him through stretches, her fingers traced the scar across his shoulder. "This," she murmured. "That was from the battle over Pelion Ridge." "Yeah," he said quietly. "Took shrapnel shielding my unit. We lost half the squad." The air between them softened. Zyla swallowed, feeling the weight of his pain as if it were her own. "I'm sorry. My people. We only read reports. We forget the stories behind them." He smiled faintly. You're learning. That's more than most. Her hand lingered longer than necessary. When she looked up, his eyes had changed wariness, melting into something tender. Nurse, he said softly. What are you really afraid of? Losing my post. My reputation. My control. Funny. He said, I'm afraid of losing all of that again. Except you. Before she could reply, the station lights flickered a power fluctuation. Brief, but jarring. Somewhere. Alarms howled. Without thinking, Zyla grabbed his hand and activated the emergency stabilizer field. For 10 seconds, they stood cocooned in blue light. The world outside their bubble dissolving into static. When the systems normalized, she realized she was still holding his hand. Neither moved. The boundary break. The next rotation, Wild entered the therapy suite early. The lights were low. Zyla was calibrating equipment. He stepped close enough that she felt his warmth. You ever wonder? He asked. Voice low. Why we fight so hard to stay apart? Because it's forbidden. Because it's real. He countered. And that scares the hell out of people like your doctor. She turned, ready to scold him, but his eyes earnest. Steady held her still. The universe tilted when his lips brushed hers. The contact was soft, fleeting, yet the shock coursed through her like plasma fire. She should have pulled away. She didn't. For a suspended instant, there was no war. No regulations. Only the pulse between them, sinking like twin stars caught in orbit. Then she stepped back, breathless. Sergeant, we can't. Then we won't. Not unless you want to. Silence. The hum of life support filled the space where 1,000 words might have been. Finally, she whispered, I want to, but not here. Not yet. He smiled. Patient, and knowing, then I'll wait. You're worth every orbit. That night, Zyla returned to her quarters, still tasting the echo of his kiss. She looked out through the viewport at the endless field of stars and felt, for the first time, that the cosmos wasn't just vast. It was alive, watching, approving. Somewhere deep in the station's humming core, 2 hearts, one human, one seraphim had aligned, and neither of them realized yet how dangerous that orbit would become. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet secret between Zyla and Sergeant Wild bloomed in the shadowed corners of Erebos Station. Their affection wasn't loud or reckless. It was found in the small things, the way she brushed her hand over his bandaged arm before a checkup, the way he saved the best of his jokes for her, the way their glances lingered a second too long across a crowded medbay. To everyone else, it might have looked like camaraderie, born from survival. But for anyone watching closely, and one man was watching it, was something far more dangerous. The watching eyes. Dr. Haxon, Chief of Medical Conduct, had the precision of a scalpel and the empathy of one. 2. He'd been in the Alliance service longer than either species had known each other, and he had no patience for the chaos that love brought to orderly systems. From his office overlooking the rehabilitation wing, he'd observed Zyla's behavior, her extended therapy sessions, the frequent laughter, the way Wild's recovery outpaced all projections, emotional entanglement. He muttered to his assistant, adjusting his data spectacles. Predictable. Dangerous. He filed the first observation report that same day. Confrontation in the corridor. Zyla left Wild's room late one evening. Her steps light, despite the exhaustion of a 16-hour shift. She was still smiling faintly when a sharp voice cut through the corridor. Nurse Zyla Vren. Doctor. Haxon stood in her path like a shadow, his long coat immaculate, his expression colder than vacuum. You've been spending an unusual amount of time with your human patient. She schooled her features into calm professionalism. Sergeant Wilde requires intensive rehabilitation. His physiology responds better to continuity of care. Continuity, he repeated. Voice dripping skepticism. Or companionship. Zyla's pulse spiked. But she met his gaze. You're implying something unethical. Doctor, I'm stating something factual. He countered. Our code forbids personal entanglement with patients, especially cross-species. You're risking more than your license. You're risking diplomatic incident. He stepped closer, lowering his tone. One slip. Nurse Vran. One, and I will have you before the board. Zyla's throat tightened, but her voice remained steady. Then you'd better make sure I actually slip. Doctor. She walked away, spine straight, though her heart trembled the whole way back to the ward. Love in the line of fire. Wilde found her in the observation deck later that night, staring out at the glittering arc of the nebula. She told him everything. I could lose my position, she whispered. My people would send me back to Elan in disgrace. He reached for her hand. Then I'll go with you. You can't. You're a soldier, bound to your command. Not anymore. They discharged me this morning, fit for limited duty. They said, which means I finally get to choose what I fight for. She looked up at him, torn between logic and longing, and in that moment, logic lost. His lips found hers again. Gentle this time. Reverent. Sealing a promise neither of them could take back. The accusation. It didn't take long. 3 days later, Zyla entered Wilde's room for their scheduled session, only to find the door already open and Dr. Haxon standing inside with a datapad in hand. His expression was victorious. I knew it, he said. Unauthorized presence. After duty hours. You were warned. Wilde sat up, defiant. Doctor, she was here to check my neural stimulator. It malfunctioned during my exercises. Inconvenient excuse. Haxon sneered. Save it for the board. Effective immediately. You are both relieved of duty pending disciplinary review. Zyla felt the floor tilt beneath her. Wilde moved faster than his recovering legs should have allowed, stepping between them. You'll punish her for helping me heal. For caring, you're blind to your own hypocrisy. Doctor, this isn't about caring. Haxon snapped. It's about control. Rules keep this station functional. Without them, we collapse into chaos. The argument drew attention. Orderlies gathered outside. Whispers filled the hall. For the first time, Zyla saw fear in their eyes, not for her, but for what would happen if love could be punished here. The Court of Conduct. 2 days later, the tribunal convened. The Medical Ethics Board assembled in the amphitheater, a semicircle of polished steel, lights bright as interrogation. At its center, the chief administrator, a tall woman named Director Nira Talon, presided like a queen of stars. Doctor. Haxon laid out his case with surgical precision timestamps. Logs. Surveillance. Stills. Zyla's defense was painfully brief. She admitted to emotional closeness, denied impropriety, and refused to apologize for compassion. When it was Wilde's turn to speak, he surprised everyone by standing tall, even without his brace. Director, he began, his voice carrying the rough honesty of a soldier who's seen too much. You can read my vitals, my logs, my scans, but you can't quantify what she did for me. I was dying, not from wounds, but from emptiness. She gave me reason to fight. If that's misconduct, then the rules are broken. Not us. A murmur swept through the audience medical staff. Zolges. Even engineers from the lower decks who'd come to witness. The found family of the ward had gathered behind them in silent solidarity. Director Talon regarded them for a long moment. Her expression unreadable. Finally, she rose. Dr. Haxon, to the purpose of regulation is to ensure integrity of care. Yet I find no evidence that this relationship compromised either patient recovery or station function. On the contrary, Sergeant Wilde's progress is unprecedented. Compassion, it seems, can be as effective as medicine. Haxon's face turned crimson. You can't be serious. This undermines the entire ethical code. Then perhaps, the director said coolly, our code needs revision. The gavel struck. The tribunal was dismissed. Aftermath. Outside the chamber, Zyla and Wilde stood side by side as the corridor erupted in applause. Kier the orderly winked. Told you. Nurse dangerous in wartime. Zyla laughed through the tears she hadn't realized she was shedding. We're free, she whispered. Wilde took her hand. Not free. Just seen. Above them, the station's glass canopy displayed the endless sprawl of stars. For once, Zyla didn't feel small beneath it. The universe had witnessed their trial and, somehow, had ruled in favor of love. The cycles passed swiftly after the tribunal, and Erevo Station, usually humming with restrained tension, felt lighter, as if the oxygen mix had subtly changed. Word of Zyla and Wilde's vindication spread across the decks like a half-forbidden fairy tale. The nurse who defied regulations for love, and the human soldier who healed faster than science allowed. It became a quiet symbol of hope amid the endless war reports flashing across the hollow feeds. For Zyla, it also meant long nights of double shifts, supervising new recruits who now looked at her as more than a senior nurse, as proof that compassion could rewrite the rules. For Wilde, recovery had turned to routine strengthening drills, weapons recalibration, and now a reassignment offer to a peacekeeping patrol orbiting Karth Prime. It should have been good news. But when he told her, her heart clenched. How long, she asked softly. 3 standard months, he said. Close to the front, but safe enough. They need someone who understands both species. Someone like us. The word us hung between them. For all the freedom they'd earned, time was stealing it away again. The secret project. The next few rotations, Zyla noticed Wilde slipping away after his shifts. He claimed extra physiotherapy, but his grin gave him away. Kier, ever the gossip, dropped hints about mysterious requisition, orders and gardens being off-limits after curfew. Zyla suspected mischief, but her schedule left no time to chase it. Then one evening, her comlink pinged, "Meet me in the Arboretum Dome. 2,100 hours. Wear something you don't mind. Starlight touching." She almost rolled her eyes. Humans and their riddles. But curiosity won. When she arrived, the usually quiet garden was transformed. The Garden of Light. Bioluminescent vines coiled up the artificial trees, twinkling like captured nebulae. The floor shimmered with scattered petals imported from Elon's sister moons, their glow echoing her own skin tone. Above, the station's hollow ceiling projected an illusion of open space, stars wheeling slowly across the void. Wilde stood at the center of it, dressed in the dark blue uniform of the Alliance, but with a looseness that was purely him. The faint tremor in his hands betrayed his nerves. "Sergeant," she teased, "this seems like an excessive therapy exercise." He smiled, eyes gleaming. "You told me once that my species doesn't understand romance. Thought I'd prove you wrong." Soft music began to play, an ancient Earth melody reconstructed from static archives. He stepped closer. Every movement, uncertain yet determined. Xyla Vren. He began. Voice rough. You found me when I was half dead and half crazy. You taught me to breathe again. To laugh again. You saw something worth saving. Her throat tightened. Wild. He dropped to one knee. The small box he opened didn't hold a traditional ring, but a glowing crystal, its light shifting between human gold and seraphim green. This is from the wreck of my ship, he said. A piece of the hull that survived the fire. I asked the engineers to forge it into something new. Like what we did. The room blurred behind tears. You're proposing in the middle of a war zone, she whispered. He grinned. Timing's never been my strength. But I figure if we can survive exploding planets and hospital politics, marriage paperwork should be easy. Xyla laughed soft. Incredulous. Joyous. Yes. You impossible human. Yes. He slid the pendant around her neck. The gem pulsed faintly, sinking to both their heartbeats. Celebration and future horizons. When the news spread through the staff deck, the medics threw a spontaneous feast, ration bars and rehydrated wine. But under the filtered glow, it felt like a royal banquet. Keir performed a terrible serenade on an improvised flute. Even Dr. Haxon offered a stiff nod of acknowledgement before retreating into his office. The next day, Director Talon summoned them both. Your union, she said, has become a political symbol. Whether you like it or not, the Alliance Council wants to feature it in their upcoming peace broadcast. Wild groaned. So much for privacy. Xyla only smiled. If it gives others hope, I can live with that. The director inclined her head. Then, consider your next assignment: diplomatic travel to Karth Prime together. As representatives of unity. The farewell before departure. On their last night aboard Arivos, Xyla and Wild returned to the now quiet garden. The projection above showed a slow drift of comets, a new cycle's illusion. She rested her head on his shoulder. I used to think this place was a cage, she said. Now it feels like where I learned to fly. He squeezed her hand. You made it one. They stood in silence, watching the comets fade. For once, the galaxy didn't feel endless. It felt reachable. Almost tender. Epilogue. The starbound vow. As their transport launched from Erebos the next morning, the station glimmered below like a halo. Xyla glanced through the viewport. The pendant at her neck, glowing softly. Wild leaned closer. You know, he murmured. I promised to shock you with my swelling for the rest of our lives. She elbowed him, laughing. You humans never forget anything embarrassing. Just the important parts, he said, kissing her temple. The stars opened before them, endless. Alive. Waiting. And somewhere in that infinite expanse, two souls, one human. One alien had proven that even amid war and duty, love could rewrite the laws of both biology and bureaucracy. Because sometimes, the most powerful force in the galaxy isn't a weapon or a treaty. It's the courage to hold another being's hand and call them home.